Welcome everyone to another Beyond All Reason video. I hope you get value out of today's video, and if you do, I would definitely appreciate a tickle of the like button. If you want to see more content like this, be sure to subscribe and keep an eye out for more videos dropping soon. I have a Twitch channel, and my wife has a jewelry store. Links are in the description below. Any support is appreciated. Now let's get into the video. Hello everyone, today we're going to be bringing you a tutorial about the T2 turrets. All of them we're going to be going over and just going over the positive and negatives of each one. Today we're starting off with the Flak cannon. I really like the anti-air flak guns. They do a great job. They seem to be best in swarms because they have a little bit more of an AoE damage than does the long-range missile tower. They have a very good DPS. You can see it's 468 DPS that's damage per second, which is great. The range is a bit shorter than the long range missile towers, so that's one negative of it, but it does seem to do a lot better when a giant swarm of fighters and such are coming over your base. So if you want to build a great anti-air, what I would do is build several of these, both the long-range missiles and the anti-air flak turrets. Build several of those throughout your whole base, and that should help take out the air, as the missile anti-air tower is better at bulkier targets than swarm targets. So a mix of both of these will be good. Next we're going to be looking at the Popup. The Popup turret is very interesting because it can only shoot over T1 walls, okay, which is kind of unique compared to a lot of the other turrets that you will find in T2. So if you want to try to defend it with walls, use T1 walls so it can still shoot. Now it does have a really great DPS. You can see 420, which is actually pretty incredible. So that's something to keep in mind. It does have a decent health and everything. The only limiting factor is its range, which is it could easily be outranged by T2 units. So it's not something that is extremely effective for all units, but it can be very nice for some of the weaker units that are trying to push forward, such as pawns or maybe some bowls, things of that nature. This guy can take out and handle pretty well. And then we have the Accelerator. This thing is the ultimate T3 killer. It can take out T3 units pretty well. You're going to need several of them, but it's definitely enough to make your enemies think twice before actually attempting an attack. It can shoot over T2 walls as well, so if for some reason you want to defend your tower and get a little bit more bulky health behind it, you can definitely put out some T2 walls out there and it can shoot over. And honestly, I would recommend doing that if you're going to set up the defense. I mean, look at it. A wall costs 40 metal and it gives you 9,000 basically, 9,000 health. That's way more than this on its own. So I would even consider doing like several walls to defend this thing from damage, and you might be able to make it last a bit longer than you have in other games. One thing that is used quite frequently is the advanced artillery here, the rattlesnake. This thing is honestly disappointing to me because when I was looking at it, I was fully expecting it to be a significant improvement from its counterpart, which would be the gauntlet, and I was just disappointed instantly. You can look here at the gauntlet's DPS. It's 190 damage per second, okay, and then we come over to the rattlesnake and its DPS is 194. So it doesn't really do that much more damage. per second than the Gauntlet, which was honestly surprising. And so I was looking and I was like, well, maybe the range is better. Maybe there's some other benefits to this thing. But the reality is the range is only better by 100. Is basically 100. So it's not that significant, and honestly, a little less powerful than I expected. One cool thing about it is that it is cloakable. The only problem is it's not movable, so after it's been spotted, then people will automatically know where it's at for the rest of the game. So, I mean, if you want to cloak it and try to use it, go for it. I'm just not a fan. You can definitely hide it behind some T2 walls and use it in high trajectory, and it can easily shoot over those to give it a little bit extra protection. Next we got the Paralyzer, the EMP missile launcher. This thing is not used enough. Look at the range on this. You could literally EMP from massive distances. It costs less than the rattlesnake, which sure, it doesn't do damage, but it has a massive range. So say you want to take this area here, but you know there's a bunch of guys here. All you have to do is pop 1, 2, 3, 4 shots, and then you can just push in. I'm not sure how fast it'll fire. There we go. Okay, so it'll take a minute for them all to fire, but I mean that's enough to give you a chance to push in. Bam, bam, bam. So I think that could be really handy with taking areas. You guys let me know what you think, but I'm probably gonna try using that a little bit more because I think that missile could definitely put some stun-ins on the late game for sure. Next we're going to be moving on to the anti-nuke system, which this is a must. I mean, if you played for any length of time, you know how important the anti-nuke is, especially as the game progresses, it becomes more and more valuable. Sometimes people will stock up missile after missile of nuke, and it's good to have not just one but a couple of these things just in case they launch like 7 nukes your way. You can defend against them all. So just stockpile these slowly but surely as the late game progresses, and you know, you'll be able to save yourself from a nuke. Then we go on to the nuke, which in my mind is situational at best. I don't love it just based on the fact that it relies a lot on scouting. If for some reason you don't get a proper scout out, it's very, very hard to actually land the nuke where there won't be an anti-nuke because it's been used and it's so well known that it's one of the first defenses people put out is the anti-nuke. So just be mindful of that. If you have a plan and you have timings you're planning on doing with the nuke, go for it. And you're like rigid on how to do everything and you got it down, go for it. And you have proper scouting and everything, go for it. But it's a bit more situational than I think some people think. Next we have the wait, basilica, basilica. That's a interesting name. Anyway, I butchered that, and that's cool. So this guy is a long-range plasma cannon, which is pretty cool. Takes a minute. It doesn't fire like all that frequently, and its DPS is a bit low. It's like 120, which isn't great compared to a lot of other things. Like this guy has a DPS, the Accelerator has a DPS of 1,000. The one thing that might be good with this in certain games is to try to get it up before the enemy realizes it. Like say on a mountain or something over here maybe. You could put up a cannon and try to launch into the back line and maybe pop some energy converters or you know, you'll have to kind of see based on what has been what kind of defenses have been built, but if you can pop someone's economy with it early game, that might be pretty good. And another good thing about it is the fact that it's capable of doing a very long range. So whereas with the Accelerator you're limited in range, I would call this more of a defensive weapon, whereas this is much more of an offensive weapon. And it doesn't really cost that much. It's like 5,000 metal, which is a lot, but it's not so crazy that it's out of reach. You know, it'll take time, it'll take resources, but it's not so crazy it's out of reach. So something to look at. I mean, looking at the nuke, just one of these costs 8,000 metal versus one of these costs 4,000 metal. Obviously, if you can hit the nuke, it'll do significantly larger amounts of damage, but it's easier. It's going to be easier to actually hit with a long-range plasma cannon than with the nuke. So I'm going to try to look into using these more frequently and see if they turn out to be beneficial. And then last but not least, oh wait, I did want to mention one more thing with the long-range plasma cannon. You cannot shoot through terrain, so that is one downside. You have to make sure that you have good line of sight with that cannon based on where you're trying to launch it, you know. So don't build it. This is actually a terrible spot for it because all I can hit is like over here and then over here, and that's about it. There's hardly anywhere else that I can shoot because of the terrain. So just be mindful when using this to keep terrain in mind. Can you shoot around it? Because it's not like an artillery, it's more of a straight shot. With the Ragnarok, however, it's a bit more of an artillery shot where it can arc above the terrain. See that? It's not relying on a straight fire. You might clip a little bit of the terrain, but it's not going to be as significant. So, the Ragnarok is well known. Everyone has seen these things, and they are incredibly strong with a DPS of 2,625 damage per second. These things can melt any base any base anywhere. This thing is able to take it out within minutes, seconds, honestly. To get the most out of your Ragnarok, you're gonna want to fire it around. You're not gonna want to just leave it shooting in one area. You're gonna want to kind of move from target to target to target, and you want to build it in a way where it's capable of hitting these like core start zones, where the enemy would likely be, where their bases would be. You want to hit those main economic zones with your Ragnarok if you can. So make sure you don't build it too far back, otherwise it won't be able to do that. And yeah, it's almost impossible to defend against one of these. We're actually going to be doing a video on Monday, hopefully, about the Ragnarok versus a shield, and even like a little bit about the shield and whether or not it's worth it, because sometimes people feel that shields are kind of lame and you just shouldn't even build them. But we're gonna look at it and kind of go based on that testing and let you guys see it and see what you think. Anyway, that is it for this video, and I will see you in the next one.